business rates. So can the Minister update us on the progress we're making towards business rates reform and tell us how this will give the nighttime economy the security they need to be prosperous?
Minister.
I completely recognise the point the Honourable Lady is making. Last autumn, alongside announcing immediate support for retail, hospitality and leisure properties, the Government published a discussion paper setting out our priorities for wider reform. And I know the Exchequer Secretary has met with a wide range of businesses on this subject. We are delivering permanently lower business rates for these sectors, and we will announce further policy details at the budget in the autumn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Kurzel in Southend, the site of the first theme park in Europe, and the Freight House in Rochford were once iconic venues in my community. Now, central to Southend and Rochford's nighttime economy, over the last 14 years, venues have been forced to close and heritage buildings have been left empty. So what steps is the Minister taking, along with Cabinet colleagues, to protect the iconic heritage and cultural venues which are the backbone of our evening and local economies?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've missed out on the particular historical gems that the Honourable Member mentions, but my daughter is a big fan of Southend, so I obviously agree wholeheartedly with them. And because we agree with the Honourable Member, that is why last December this Government announced the largest round of the Community Ownership Fund, awarding £36 million to 85 projects right across the UK. In fact, I agree with the Honourable Member so much that my own office is in the rejuvenated Albert Hall in Swansea, which has previous incarnations as a cinema and a bingo venue and a music venue, but behaviour in that building is much better these days.
Mr. Speaker, just a few weeks ago I held a round table in my constituency with UK hospitality and other hospitality businesses, hotels, nighttime economy businesses, pubs. It was just after the first national insurance rise payment, which means that those businesses have been devastated and are having fewer jobs, fewer apprentices, and less investment. What they're worried about as they look to the future is whether the Chancellor will be raising taxes again in the coming months. So can the Minister assure my businesses that the Chancellor won't be coming back for more?
Minister.
Well, what the Secretary is doing is welcoming the trade deals done by this Government yesterday. What they're worried about is a Conservative Party that can't bring itself to welcome a single trade deal with any country round the world. The party of Robert Peel has turned its back on the entire world.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Hop Tub in Hurstpierpoint, the Hop Sun in Haywards Heath and the Brickworks in Burgess Hill are three fantastic microbreweries serving constituents in mid-Sussex. Given the pressures of national insurance and the challenges of business rates, what is the Treasury doing to support these innovative businesses?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think everybody in this House enjoys the proliferation of microbreweries right around this country, and that's why this Government is supporting draft beer and cider by knocking 1p off the price of a pint at the budget last year, because it is important that we support not only our pubs but the brewers that produce the content that's sold in them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sasha Lord, Labour's former nighttime economy advisor, says that it's tougher for the hospitality industry today than it was even during the pandemic. But the Chancellor is ignoring his advice and pushing ahead with a cocktail of costs which the Nighttime Association has called a death sentence for our pubs, our bars and our clubs. Can the Minister and the Chancellor not see that the future of the industry is fatally undermined by that anti-growth taxation?
Minister.
Well, what's anti-growth is the party opposite that sat over 15 long years of decline, completely unprecedented economic stagnation. Our job is to support the hospitality and leisure sector more generally. That's why we're reducing red tape through the cross-government licensing task force. It's why we're permanently cutting business rates, moving away from the year-by-year chaotic system put in place by the party opposite. And it's why we're engaging all the time with the Hospitality Sector Council.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The trade deal that we have secured with India adds around £5 billion to the UK economy. And the way that social security contributions work is that if somebody who works for an Indian business is posted to the UK, or indeed someone from a UK business is posted to India, they won't be paying two lots of social security contributions. So if you're paying into the Indian Provident Fund in India, you won't be paying national insurance contributions here. And if you're paying national insurance contributions here, you wouldn't be paying into the Indian Provident Fund. On top of this, to come to the UK to work from India, you'll need to pay just over £3,000 in the NHS surcharge to be able to access those services, and £769 in visa fees, contributing to the UK Exchequer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I note that the Chancellor didn't actually address the point of the cost to the Exchequer of the Double Contributions Convention, which this government has agreed with India. Under that convention, Indian workers sent here by their employers on intra-company transfers cost more in taxes than British workers. But with this deal, this flips, and these Indian workers will be taxed less and cost less to employ than British rivals for doing the same jobs. This will not only cost the Treasury lost revenue, which she didn't admit just now, but displace British workers, suppress wages and increase immigration. So will the Chancellor commit now to monitoring the effects of this agreement, and if the data shows any of these things happening, promise to scrap this Charter for immigration with India?
Well, this deal is worth £5 billion to the UK economy, and it also benefits British workers being posted by their company to work in India. And the party opposite are now in an absurd situation where they oppose the US deal, they oppose the India deal, and they oppose the deal with the EU. The party opposite are simply not serious. And when it comes to the India deal, it reduces tariffs on Scotch whisky by more than half, bringing more good jobs, paying decent wages to the UK. And the party opposite seem to be against that.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Special steels business Paraloy in Billingham in my constituency has told me that uncertainty on international trade has recently left their customers running for the hills. Does the Chancellor of the Exchequer agree with me that now that we have trade deals coming along like buses with India, with the US and with the EU, then we can give reliability and confidence to important local businesses like Paraloy in my constituency who want to export to the world?
The steel sector is one of the sectors that particularly benefits from the trade deals that this government have secured, freeing ourselves of tariffs on steel going into the US. And indeed, the deal that was secured with the EU yesterday means that we avoid tariffs on steel being sold into European markets, as well as now being exempt from the European CBAM scheme. Good for steel, good for jobs right across Britain.
Dr. Peter Prince.
Number 8, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Treasury has reformed the spending review process to ensure that it facilitates genuine collaboration across departments. As part of this spending review, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster and I have met with Secretaries of State multilaterally in mission clusters. These clusters have brought departments together to agree cross-departmental priorities, increase transparency, reduce duplication and align spending with mission delivery across Whitehall, whilst learning every possible lesson of the failure of the Conservatives and making sure it's never repeated ever again.
Dr. Peter Prince.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the Minister for his answer. 9,000 UK medical graduates compete for postgraduate training with 15,000 overseas graduates, meaning that many of our own graduates simply cannot progress into higher professional training and either go abroad themselves or leave medicine. So does the Minister agree with me that the Treasury has a crucial role to coordinate spending on medical university education by the Department of Education and postgraduate training by the Department of Health, so as to ensure that public money we spend on medical student education is not wasted?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for raising this important question. The government is committed to training the staff the NHS needs as part of our 10-year plan. International staff clearly play an important role in the mix of staff that we have, but we also want to create opportunities for people across the country to work in our National Health Service. That's why already, thanks to changes this government has made, we've been able to recruit over 1,500 additional GPs since October who would have otherwise not have been able to seek that type of employment.
Sir Roger Gale.
Mr. Speaker, while discussing the spending review, will the department get the Minister for Agriculture and the Energy Minister together into the same room, make sure that agriculture receives the funding that it needs, while energy is not being allowed to charge agriculture effectively for its loss of income? In other words, could she make sure that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Minister.
A meeting of that nature has already taken place as part of our mission-led approach to government. We continue to engage with the Department for Energy and DEFRA as he suggests on these issues, and is exactly what we mean when we talk about cross-departmental collaboration. As he knows, further details will be set out in the spending review in due course.
Under back. Chancellor.
I was pleased to visit, along with my honourable friend, the 100th banking hub that was rolled out to Darwin just a few months ago, as also visiting Darwin Market, a thriving market in one of his local towns. We'll be setting out at the spending review how we will spend the £113 billion extra that we're putting into capital spending compared to the plans that we inherited from the party opposite. And of course, we'll be making sure that towns and cities, including across the north of England, benefit from that investment.
I'll do back now.
Thank you, Chancellor, for that answer. And the government's commitment to the north is absolutely clear, and we very much enjoyed the visit to Darwin Market. But at the same time, history tells us that small towns, like those that make up Rosendale and Darwin, can far too easily get left behind and not feel the benefits from major infrastructure investment. Yet those are the very communities that need to see and feel change the most. So would the Chancellor agree with me that as we implement our investment and growth strategy and deliver the review of the Green Book, that we must put our left behind communities first? That as part of every major investment decision, we should ask the question, what does this do for our most deprived and left behind neighbourhoods? And only through targeting investment where it's needed most can we ensure that every community feels the benefit the growth this government will bring.
Chancellor.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. He's a proud champion of the towns and villages of Rosendale and Darwin. We will absolutely make sure that we use our Green Book review to properly assess the benefit of all investments that this government makes. But on top of that capital investment, of course, the people of Rosendale and Darwin are benefiting from the reductions in NHS waiting lists, the 3 million additional appointments we've delivered, and also the increase in the national living wage, which will make working people in Rosendale and Darwin and across the country better off.
Tim Farron.
Mr Speaker, the towns and villages of the lakes and the dales in Cumbria are proud to host 20 million visitors every single year. We're the biggest visitor destination outside of London and the UK, and yet we get almost no support whatsoever for the highways, other infrastructure, health, police force costs that are incurred by those visitors. Will she look at funding allocations to make sure those services that support the people and the visitors of the Lake District are properly funded?
Chancellor.
Well, the Green Book reforms will make sure that we properly assess the benefits of investments in different parts of the UK. But of course, the people of Cumbria and the Lakes will benefit from the record investment in the NHS, the rollout of nurseries and free breakfast clubs at primary schools, as well as the increase in the national living wage, which many workers in sectors like hospitality and retail in his constituency will benefit directly from.
Paul Foster.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. One way to get the officials to start focusing more on northern towns would be perhaps to move the Treasury up north. And after experiencing our rail networks and our infrastructure, they may very quickly invest more money. Are there any plans to move any Treasury departments to the north?
Number 11 Market Street, Chorley. Come on.
This government have committed to increasing the proportion of civil servants who work in the north of England, but we already have a hub which we are expanding in Darlington, where 8 government departments work, including officials from the Treasury. So at the Treasury, we are very much mindful of the importance of investing right across the north of England, in Darlington, Leeds, Cumbria, Rosendale and Darwin, and many other constituencies beside.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The prosperity of northern towns is very much dependent on good transport connections. So could the Chancellor ensure that national highways are adequately funded so that they could improve the access to the port and town of Immingham by improvements to the A180, and also ensure that the Department of Transport have got adequate funds to ensure the very modest amount they need to fund an extension of the King's Cross to Lincoln train service through to Grimsby and Cleethorpes?
Chancellor.
Well, I'll make sure that the Transport Secretary hears those requests, but the honourable gentleman knows that the investment we're putting in at British Steel, where we're increasing the number of jobs thereafter, saving that company, will make a massive difference to his constituents, as will the investment in renewable energy in the North Sea, particularly around Immingham and the local area, creating good jobs, paying decent wages in his constituency and in many others too.
Patrick Hurley.
Number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and and I'd like to answer this question together with questions 11 and 14. I know that my honourable friend is working closely with the local Labour council in Southport to regenerate the local town centre, and we'll make sure that this government backs him every step of the way.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it's the Marine Lake Event Centre, the Enterprise Arcade or the new Market Quarter in my Southport constituency, my town has benefited from state-led investment in neighbourhoods and public realm. So can I ask the Chancellor if she agrees with me that investment policies of this sort are essential to driving economic growth in our regions and nations, and will help us to finally turn the page on the failed austerity policies of the party opposite?
Chancellor.
I absolutely agree, and that is why we reversed the decisions of the party opposite to cut capital spending and instead preserve that capital investment, which means we'll be spending £113 billion more on capital investment on road, rail, energy, homes and digital infrastructure than those plans that we inherited from the party opposite, but also day-to-day things like making sure we've got police on our streets, making sure that we're working with our mayors, including Mayor Steve Rotherham, to make sure that we get the investment into the places that most need it.
Charles Athwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. In Ilford South, we have many small businesses ranging from restaurants like Deli O'Deli, Mr. Bunt's Bakery, tea shops like My Chai, and local stores like Chopra's convenience stores. They make Ilford an amazing place to eat, shop and do business. Will the Chancellor join me in commending these local businesses who make the High Street the beating heart of Ilford South? And will she lay out what steps she is taking to support these entrepreneurs?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. At the budget, we more than doubled the employment allowance to £10,500 to take many small businesses out of paying national insurance altogether. On corporate tax, we've maintained the small profits rate to help smaller businesses, and to help entrepreneurs to raise finance and grow. The government has extended the Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Venture Capital Trust Scheme, and I will very much add my words in supporting businesses right across Ilford, and the work that you do, that my honourable friend does as an MP to champion those businesses.
Jill Jarman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clwyd North is a proud coastal constituency, home to a dedicated hospitality sector, many of them small businesses, including the recently opened Bobcat's Coffee, where young entrepreneur Bobby is an example to us all. Economic circumstances, though, have been tough after a decade of neglect by the Tories, so will the Secretary of State outline the Treasury's plans to support these businesses that are such a vital part of our local economy?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. This government will introduce permanently lower rates for high street retail, hospitality and leisure properties with rateable values below £500,000, and we'll be doing that from the next financial year to exactly support the sorts of businesses that my honourable friend champions.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker, and I draw attention to my register of interests. Earlier this month, Harbour Energy announced that it would be cutting 25% of its onshore workforce, blaming the government's punitive fiscal position and challenging regulatory environment. When the news was announced, the Chancellor said that this was just a commercial decision by one company. So how does the Chancellor explain that in just the last few weeks, the following other energy sector jobs have been lost in North East Scotland. Belmar Energy entering liquidation with 48 job losses. WellSafe Solutions, 45 job losses. Beam, a subsea technology company, all 200 staff made redundant. And on top of the 25% from Harbour, that's 250. We're talking about 600 jobs. How can she explain this, and how will she support the industry in the spending review?
Chancellor, hurry up.
I thank the honourable member for that question, and my honourable friend, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, is working closely with businesses right across the energy sector. Of course, the previous government increased the rate of tax on energy companies to 75%. We increased it by 3 percentage points above that, reflecting the fact that energy companies have enjoyed huge profits since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And it is right, when people's bills have gone up, that we ask the energy companies making those profits to contribute a little bit more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What changes will the Chancellor introduce in the spring statement to compensate for the growth-threatening sword of Damocles she's just placed over the Scottish fishing industry? She should know, but probably doesn't, that 70% of revenue from fishing and aquaculture comes from Scotland. She should know, but probably doesn't, that the fishing industry in Scotland is 50 times larger for Scotland's economy than the UK. So can she explain what discussions did she have with the Scottish Fishermen's Federation or the Scottish Government before making this damaging decision?
Well, I was very pleased that the Scottish Salmon Association welcomed the trade deal that we secured with the EU yesterday. And 70% of the fish that is caught in UK waters is sold into European markets. That will now benefit from the SPS deal that we have secured in that deal. We've rolled over the deal that the previous government secured, giving certainty to fishermen in Scotland and across the UK, made it easier for them to export into their European markets. We've ensured that we can now sell shellfish again into European markets, and we announced a £360 million package of measures to support coastal and fishing industries yesterday. The SNP are now in an absurd situation where they support reform and the Tories in opposing the deal with the EU.
Callum Miller.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Chancellor's answers on growth. She's been a strong champion of the Oxford-Cambridge growth corridor, but my constituents in Bicester and Woodstock are concerned to know that she will lend her support to Lord Valence's efforts to join up across departments and ensure that there is the social infrastructure to support the growth, because they worry that hospitals, schools and roads will not keep up with the ambitious pace that Lord Valence is putting forward.
Well, thank the honourable gentleman for that question. It's very opportune because I'll be meeting Lord Valence this afternoon to discuss the work that he's taking forward on the Oxcam corridor to bring more good jobs, paying good wages to both Oxford, Cambridge, but also, crucially, the towns and cities in between. And some of the extra money that we're putting into capital investment will absolutely be going to support the huge growth opportunities in that part of the world.
Shadow Minister Richard Fuller.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, the best way to improve economic growth is for this Chancellor to stop punishing businesses with higher taxes. But within the spending review, the key is to improve public sector productivity, and as the Chancellor knows, one of the key aspects to do that is the use of technology. And this government has substantial advantages over the next few years, with major advances in AI technology, but those can only be captured if the Treasury sets clear directions for departments, including incentives and penalties. So could the Chancellor advise what directives has His Majesty's Treasury given departments to improve productivity through the adoption of artificial intelligence, and specifically whether this advice includes a requirement for the use of agentic AI during the multi-year spending period?
Chancellor.
I thought the honourable gentleman was going to welcome the investment of Universal Studios in Bedfordshire, which would be a massive boon to the Bedfordshire economy. In terms of supporting AI adoption, we're doing two key things. First of all, supporting that sector investing in the UK. And of course, the deal we secured with the US will help bring more investment into the digital sector in the UK, but also, crucially, improving productivity of our public services. And the honourable gentleman will see more about that when we publish the spending review on the 11th of June. But we are absolutely determined to boost productivity in the public sector after the mess it was left in by the party opposite.
Era Wilson.
Question number 13, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to keeping taxes for working people as low as possible. The personal allowance means those earning below £12,570 pay no tax, and at our first budget we decided not to extend the freeze of personal tax thresholds, which was implemented by the previous government.
Era Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his response, but could I ask him what short and long-term assessment ministers have made of the cost to the taxpayer of the deep cuts in grants for therapy for some of the most vulnerable and traumatised children in our country through the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund, given the Treasury's intransigence in putting more money into a fund to meet rising demand? It's likely that adoption and kinship care placements will fail, resulting in more children in the care system in the short term, and in the long term, sadly, we know care experienced children are 4 times more likely to end up with a criminal conviction. There is a moral and an economic case to support this fund properly.
The Ministers.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to making sure that adoptive parents are able to build a strong family unit with their adopted children, I obviously recognise very much the importance of that as a constituency MP as well as a minister. But if I can take a broader point here about investment in public services, of course the only reason why we're able to invest in public services is because of difficult decisions we've taken around taxation, and the problem with her party and the parties opposite is they're happy to support the extra funding for public spending but not the tax rises necessary to pay for it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This isn't an issue to make a party political point on, because the reality is the 40% cut to the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund will be deeply impactful on young people, people who have experienced significant trauma in their life, abuse, neglect and so much more. So it's really imperative that we make the right investment in the light that our mental health services are not fit for purpose at the moment, to ensure that these young people have a life course opportunity, not being denied if this fund is cut. So will he review the decision and ensure that we can have the proper funding that young people need?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend will know, spending decisions are for the Chief Secretary of the Treasury to discuss with departments. And I'd make the general point to her, though, that investment in, for instance, mental health, which she mentioned in her remarks just there, is again only possible because of the decisions we've taken around taxation to make sure we can support public spending in our health service, in mental health services and support for young people.
Sir Roberts.
15, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is absolutely the right question. We all understandably hear calls for higher rates of pension saving, but the prior question is how do we make sure that savers get the absolute best bang for their buck for every penny they save? And the forthcoming pension schemes bill will help make that happen, with bigger pension schemes, fewer small pension pots, driving down costs and up rates of saving for pensioners.
Sir Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chair of the reconstituted Pensions and Growth APPG, could the Minister share any plans for how counties outside of mayoral authorities, like Staffordshire, could benefit from pension reforms to encourage more investment in the UK to support infrastructure, jobs and local regeneration?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly can. Our reforms to the local government pension scheme will support local investment in every part of England and Wales. Our defence spending plans will be felt on the ground. Total defence spending in the West Midlands totals £1.6 billion a year. We're building reservoirs again, including one in the West Midlands. And we're getting this country trading once again, including businesses in Tamworth, where PI Chem, a specialist chemical supplier, recently won a major export order supported by £100,000 in UK export finance support. Britain and Tamworth are open for business.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister for his answer? Minister, it's the uptake of pensions I want to ask about in relation to those who are 18 starting off. They encourage them to take their pensions out. Whenever I was 18, my mother took me down to the pension man, John Thompson in Ballywalter, says, "You're going to take a pension." I says, "What for, Mum?" She says, "You're taking a pension," and we took the pension. So would the Honourable member agree that what everybody really needs is someone like my mother to encourage them to take a pension?
I didn't know where that was going for a bit, but I can 100% speak on behalf of everybody in this House when we say the whole country needs people like your mother.
That's really simple.
Question 16, Mr. Speaker.
Chancellor.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to answer this question together with question 18. Kickstarting economic growth is the #1 mission of this government. From next financial year, South Yorkshire Combined Authority will receive a single flexible funding pot through their integrated settlement, and the East Midlands Combined Authority will benefit from a new advanced manufacturing and logistics park, unlocking up to £1 billion of investment. Both areas will benefit from the £240 million of investment towards trailblazers to tackle economic inactivity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stocksbridge Speciality Steels in my constituency has strategically significant, highly specialist capability to produce world-leading steel, crucial to our national defence, aerospace and energy industries. This site employs 650 people and has an excellent skills training centre. I welcome the government's £2.5 billion commitment for our UK steel industry. What discussions has the Chancellor had with the Department for Business and Trade to ensure the government will do everything they can to secure the British steel industry using our domestic steel assets productively, in particular for the Stocksbridge Speciality Steel site in my constituency?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And whilst I'm not going to get into the sort of detailed discussions about one individual company, this government did set out the £2.5 billion steel fund in the budget last year to preserve and grow steel manufacturing in the UK. And it's why in the 2 trade deals that we've secured in the last couple of weeks with the US and with the EU, we've reduced tariffs on steel exports, which will be good for the British steel industry.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Shockingly, in Derby South, 62% of adults in our community are financially vulnerable, far above the 38% national average. To lift people out of this vicious cycle, we need a growing economy. But if you're worried about how you'll make it to the next pay, dreading the unexpected bill or struggling to feed your family, the benefits of growth can feel miles out of reach. Can the Chancellor outline how her plan for growth will put money into people's pocket and deliver change for people in our struggling communities?
Chancellor.
We'll shortly be publishing a financial inclusion strategy, as well as extending the household support fund to support some of the most vulnerable. But there are huge opportunities, as my honourable friend knows, in Derby. I was at Rolls-Royce in Derby just last week, and what we are doing in terms of trade deals, particularly with the US, hugely support our aerospace sector, along with the increased spending on defence, taking it to 2.5% of GDP, helping to invest in great British firms and indeed in great British steel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm aware that Derby's economy was blighted last November by a foul smell said to be emanating from its local water treatment works. Similar is true of my constituency in Eastbourne, due to the failure of Southern Water's air scrubbing system. Will the Chancellor ensure that the spending review grants the Environment Agency the resources it needs to crack down on smell nuisances, so that these water companies get a grip of this for the benefit of local growth and our
Question to the question, forgot it. Let's go to topicals. Rosie Duffield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1, please.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is securing economic growth. Last week, the numbers published showed that the economy grew by 0.7% in the first quarter of this year, including an 8% increase year-on-year in investment spending. We are now the fastest growing economy in the G7. Since the last election, there has been 4 cuts in interest rates, 200,000 jobs created, 3 trade deals secured. Britain's economy is stronger, but I will continue to do everything in my power to ensure that working people are better off.
Rosie Duffield.
Mr. Speaker, Westminster is once again buzzing with the latest U-turns, speculation and briefings over the Chancellor's policies on the winter fuel allowance and the two-child limit benefits cap. It's less of a buzz for those visitors to Canterbury Food Bank, however, who last month distributed enough food to make 13,545 meals, a 47% rise on the same period last year. Will the Chancellor end the serious anxiety of those experiencing fuel and food poverty now and reverse those policies?
Chancellor.
I thank the Honourable Lady for that question. The only reason that we've been able to grow the economy and get those cuts in interest rates, which help working families in Canterbury and right across our country, is to have returned stability back to our economy. And that means never making a policy commitment without being able to say where the money is coming from. That is what got our country into a mess under the previous government. So we've set out the policies that we needed to put investment into the NHS and to secure our public finances.
Tracy Gilbert.
Last month, Ports officially opened the Charles Hammond berth at the Port of Leith, a £100 million private investment to create Scotland's largest renewable hub. Will my right honourable friend join me in welcoming this investment in Leith and set out how she is working with Cabinet colleagues to ensure green manufacturing and supply chain jobs are created in Scotland?
Minister.
Can I join my honourable friend in welcoming the news that the Charles Hammond berth is now officially open? As she knows, we set up Great British Energy in Scotland, bringing forward £300 million of investment ahead of the spending review to secure jobs and supply chains. And funding for the Port of Cromarty Firth, announced in March, is expected to support up to 1,000 highly skilled jobs, while our uplift to the Clean Industry bonus will support offshore wind supply chains across the country. This is yet another example of the government working with business and a Labour government delivering for the people of Scotland.
Right, we come to Shadow Chancellor Mellström.
Mr. Speaker, can the Chancellor explain what the Economic Secretary meant last week when she said that there will be, and I quote, no tax rises on individuals at the autumn budget? And can she similarly confirm that there will be no tax increases on businesses?
Chancellor.
In our manifesto, we set out that we would not increase taxes on working people, the income tax, national insurance or VAT that they pay. And it's why we also reversed the decision by the previous government to increase fuel duty, which would have had a disastrous effect on working people in our country. We'll set out all other tax policy at the budget.
Mellström.
What many up and down the country, Mr. Speaker, are asking is why that manifesto pledge not to impose taxes on working people was broken. But could I ask the right honourable lady, last week the Pensions Minister confirmed to the House that the government will never interfere with the fiduciary duty of pension trustees to get the best return for their members. But when the Chancellor was questioned on that topic by Bloomberg the very same day, she said, never say never. This is chaos, Mr. Speaker. They can't even speak with one voice. It is clear that the right honourable lady and the Pensions Minister cannot both be right. So will she now put the record straight?
Chancellor.
Well, we've secured an agreement with the biggest pension companies to invest on a voluntary basis in UK unlisted equities and infrastructure. That's something that the party opposite never achieved. We're getting investment into British infrastructure and British businesses because that's the way to grow the economy and support working people.
Serena Blackenridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will my right honourable friend outline the steps that he's taking in the forthcoming spending review so the increased defence spending will stimulate economic growth in which supply chains like Collins Aerospace in my constituency can continue to strengthen national defence capabilities whilst boosting our local economies, jobs and quality apprenticeships?
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question? As she knows, the government is committed to increasing spending on defence to 2.5% of GDP with an ambition to go further to 3% in the next Parliament when economic and fiscal conditions allow. As part of that increase in spending, we're making sure that UK companies and UK workers get the benefit, including in places like Wolverhampton, for apprenticeships, good jobs and good growth.
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yesterday, the Chancellor said that she understands the concerns that some people have about the limit at which the winter fuel payment is removed. In light of that, does the Chancellor now agree that restricting the eligibility so tightly was a mistake?
Chancellor.
As the honourable lady knows, when I became Chancellor last year, we inherited a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, not at some year in the future, but in the financial year that we were already 3 or 4 months into. It meant that we had to make difficult decisions and urgent decisions to put our public finances back on a firm footing, because unlike the party opposite, I will never play fast and loose with the public finances.
Borough Council recently announced investment to reopen the iconic Grimwade building, which had been left vacant in our town centre for more than a decade. This local ambition matches the government's national initiatives, but challenges remain, however. So what steps are the government taking to go even further and reform the unfair business rate system for good?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and we are determined to go further and faster to reform business rates, and it's why we will publish an update paper in the summer. It's also why I'm very glad we can work with councils like Ipswich to make sure that we can turn around town centres after years of Conservative decline.
Joshua Reynolds.
With interest rates still high, what assessment has the Chancellor made of the number of homeowners going into mortgage arrears and the impact that is having on families right across the UK?
We are in weekly touch with the FCA that regulates mortgages, but what we have seen under this government is 4 interest rate cuts since the election, which is bringing mortgage rates down for hard-working people across the country.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Chancellor agree that 4 interest rate cuts, 3 trade deals, 2 successive quarters of growth, and almost 1% of growth announced last week show our plan for change is working? And does she agree? And does she agree that it is now essential that this House supports the government's planning and infrastructure bill and other efforts to boost growth and put money in the pockets of my constituents in Ealing Southall?
Chancellor.
I very much agree with my honourable friend, but what is truly extraordinary is that the Conservatives, Reform and the SNP voted against the planning and infrastructure bill or abstained and don't support any of the trade deals that we secured, which will support working people in our country.
Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My Hazel Grove constituents are content to pay their fair share of tax, but they're understandably disappointed when HMRC overcharges them and then ghosts them. Gail from Romiley is a foster carer who was owed a tax repayment. She repeatedly contacted HMRC over a 9-month period, but it was only when my superstar casework team got involved did she get a £1,200 rebate. What assurance can ministers give my constituents that HMRC is adequately resourced to give them the support they need to pay their fair share of tax?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to hear about the constituents' experience in the case that the honourable lady raises, but to reassure her and her constituents, one of my priorities as chair of HMRC board is to improve day-to-day performance of HMRC. We've seen in the last year the percentage of telephony advisor attempts handled go from 59% last March to 80% this March, and it will remain a priority for me to modernise and digitise the service.
Mr. Speaker, the European Emissions Trading Scheme has a carbon price 50% higher than the UK's price. What assessment has the Chancellor made of the impact of joining this scheme will have on inflation in this country?
Chancellor.
Well, as my honourable friend knows, sometimes the UK carbon price has been higher, but sometimes it's been lower than the carbon price in the EU. But what this deal will ensure is a bigger market, which on average brings prices down. We're confident that the deal secured yesterday will bring more good jobs and will bring down bills for consumers.
Mr.
Speaker, Scottish councils now have the power to introduce a tourism levy. This has gone down extremely badly with the hospitality sector, and in particular, they fear a tax on a tax. A tax would be VAT. Could I ask the government to look at zero-rating this in the event that a tourism levy is introduced?
Chancellor.
Well, I want to welcome tourists to Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that's why we are securing trade deals with countries around the world, showing that we as a country are open for business. In the end, it's up to the Scottish Government about what additional taxes they introduce. But as with income tax, you can always see that the SNP never take the side of ordinary working people.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I raised the case with the Disability Minister of a local disability charity being hit by increased bank charges. He's committed to work with me. Will Treasury Ministers do the same so we can take these banks to task and support these fantastic local organisations?
Minister.
I would be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss the issue raised.
Chamberlain.
Mr. Speaker, access to banking services is a particular issue in North East Fife, where the limitations of the access to cash legislation is becoming clear. Will the Financial Inclusion Committee agree to look at the Act to ensure that we get the access to banking services that local communities need?
Our government secured the commitment of the banking industry to roll out 350 banking hubs across the country. 200 have already been agreed and over 150 are open. The Financial Inclusion Committee that I am chairing is looking at financial inclusion, including digital banking and banking, making sure that people have the bank accounts that they need.
David Pinto-Chichinsky.
I want to start by congratulating the Chancellor of the Exchequer for securing the Mansion House Agreement, an agreement that Mansion House Accord, an agreement that will channel billions into the economy and will make a real difference for my constituents in Hendon. One of the reasons pension funds agreed to join the Accord is because of the strong pipeline of investable projects the government is creating. Does my honourable friend agree with me that the government's infrastructure plans and planning reforms opposed by the party opposite will unlock...
Who wants to answer it? Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely correct. Raising investment in the UK is about boosting not just the supply of capital, but the demand for that capital, the investment pipeline. We are approving infrastructure projects from wind farms to reservoirs that the party opposite blocked for years. And by reforming the planning system, we are doing something really radical, building some homes.
Gregory Capp.
Mr. Speaker, the rollout of banking hubs is helping to a small degree. But what plans do the government have to increase the number of banking hubs beyond that which is currently in the pipeline?
Well, as I said in answer to the previous question, we have committed, we have secured the commitment of the industry to open 350 by the end of this Parliament. Banking hubs by the end of this Parliament, and the SCA keeps the access to cash rules under review as legislated under the last government. They have the power to access. Make rules to ensure that there is access to cash across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday there was a lot of coverage of the Chancellor's comments about the ISA limits of 20, and she committed to pledging to keep to the £20,000, but not within that whether how much would be in cash and investment. Can she reassure me that she is seriously considering the impact on the mortgage lending market of changing the cash ISA limit?
Minister.
As we announced in the spring statement, we are looking for options of reform to ISAs to make sure we get the balance right between cash and equities. But I will reassure the Honourable Lady, we understand that cash savings have a really vital tool for people to act as a financial buffer for a rainy day.
Mr. McVeigh.
I'm sure the Chancellor subscribes to the basic principle that if the cost of something is put up, then we'll see less of it. It's the reason that governments over many years have put taxes on things like smoking. Does she accept this principle also applies to employing people? And the more expensive this government makes employing people with its jobs tax, increasing nick for employers, the less we will see of it.
Well, I think a really good example of that is the Conservative Party. The cost of the Conservative Party went up and the number of MPs shrunk.
The Commission on Neighbourhoods report recently showed Blackpool has 98% of its population living in neighbourhoods that are high need. With 34 critical mission neighbourhoods in my constituency, can the Chancellor outline what this government is doing to improve growth in our forgotten coastal towns?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. Yesterday we announced £360 million of investment in coastal and fishing communities, which will be absolutely vital for ensuring that those constituencies and those communities continue to thrive.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue are seeing a real terms cut in funding, partly because the majority of firefighters are on call, so the employer's NICs weren't sufficiently compensated. Will the Chancellor commit to review the funding formula to fit needs of communities and undertake a local impact assessment on the effect of the funding cuts on public and firefighter safety?
Here. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This government has already increased spending on the NHS by £22.6 billion, police funding by £1.1 billion and fire and rescue authorities by another £65.5 million. Further spending will be set out in the June spending review, but this is yet again another example of a Labour government delivering on the promise of change.
Final question, Brian Leishman.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. To alleviate grinding penury for millions, the Chancellor could introduce an annual wealth tax on multimillionaires that would raise approximately £24 billion per annum. Yet the Chancellor refuses to entertain this, but does consider cuts to welfare as acceptable. Why do, quote-unquote, tough political choices always seem to impact those that are most vulnerable?
Chancellor.
At the budget last year, we increased the rate of tax on non-doms. We increased capital gains tax. We increased the carried interest on bonuses, and we also introduced VAT on private schools. This government is ensuring that the wealthiest pay their fair share, because that's a basic Labour principle.
Right, we'll let the front benches change over. Now come to the statement from the Prime Minister, EU trade oral statement. Keir Starmer, sir.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With permission, I'd like to update the House on the 3 recent trade deals we've struck